Sure. A very brief synopsis is that it's about a young woman's journey into an ultra-Orthodox Jewish cult. The slightly longer version is that it examines what might make a young, relatively successful woman choose to transform her life so thoroughly from a modern secular life to a life of Torah, living by Torah. And it also looks at what might make a community of believers that, starts off being fairly open, inclusive, although Orthodox, who start off being open to the world and expansive, what might cause them to close in on themselves and shut themselves out from the outside world, and to twist the religion into something that is a tool of repression and control. I don't think I consciously set out to write about belonging, but I agree that that's probably at the heart of the novel, or its opposite, loneliness. I think at its core, it's a book about the alienation of modern life and the need, the yearning that many of us feel to belong and to be part of something bigger. I spoke before about how I was interested in Sarah's journey from, a modern woman to an Orthodox Jew. And I think, while she had all the outward signs of success, she was a lawyer, she was relatively successful, she was loved deeply by her mother, she felt alone, and she felt this yearning to be part of something bigger, a big family, a relationship, a community. And I think that's something that many of us feel in this modern world, where we're told to strive for outward measures of success, but that doesn't necessarily bring us the peace and contentment we need. Ideally, I think you can have both. I think healthy love doesn't mean you have to give up your freedom, obviously. But I think we all, and this is something I'm quite interested in, is we all give up, up freedoms to an extent, or accept restrictions in order to be in relationships and get love. I mean, I'm married, I have 3 kids. I'm not as free as I might be if I didn't have any of those things, but I get love from them. So I don't think it's such a stark choice. I mean, I was interested in pushing it to the limit, and that's what makes for a story, and that sort of raises ideas, choice between them. As to look, it's a work of fiction, and the fictional characters, but definitely my experience with my connection to Judaism definitely inspired and influenced the writing. I grew up in Wellington, New Zealand, which has a really tiny Jewish community, and I was raised within an Orthodox Jewish community, but my family were not particularly observant. It was a modern Orthodox synagogue. But I think being such a minority, the only Jewish person in your school, the only Jewish person that many people have ever met in their lives, really makes it you either assimilate or it becomes a very important part of your identity. And for me, it was the latter. And then when I was in my last year of school, I actually went to Jewish day school in Melbourne for a year, and I was hosted with a family in South Caulfield. So I went from one extreme to the other in terms of coming into this extremely, to me, was very large and very cohesive and strong Jewish community. I was thinking about it today, and I don't think I met a single non-Jewish person during that year. So I think, and I only reflected on this recently, but I think actually that experience of coming into a Jewish community probably affected Sarah's experience, because she in a way is an outsider coming in. Although she grew up in Sydney, her mother sort of kept them away from her larger family and the community. So definitely that idea of being an outsider and observing and being brought into something like that. So I think those experiences influenced me. And then in terms of Sarah's journey from sort of secular life to ultra orthodoxy, I mean, I know many people who have gone down that journey to different extremes, friends, family members. I had a flatmate when I was living in Israel who was going through that process. I saw it in New Zealand. I saw it when I was traveling through Southeast Asia. So, I mean, that is quite a familiar journey. And it's something that always fascinated me. Whenever I encountered those people, I just had so many questions, and especially for women, because from my perspective, they seem to have to give up a lot more and through the process. Yeah, so that's in terms of religion being negative or positive. Look, I think for me, it's been a very positive part of my life. It's a big part of my identity. For people who are more devout, I think it can, bring enormous peace and comfort in difficult times, and it can give you certainty and focus, and the ritual's wonderful. I suppose in this novel, I was looking at the boundary and the grey area and what might make, joyful or at least sort of benign religion become something darker and more dangerous. And in The Covered Wife, at least, it changes when the community cuts itself off from others, and when the rules are used as a form of control over the followers, and where, they start to view the community as us and them. I think that's when it can become something more dangerous. Probably not. Like, not in the complexity that we would understand it. And I struggled to describe that in the book. I think a Jewish person reading The Covered Wife, so much of it will just be so familiar to them. The different types of Jews that, Sarah's family are sort of, they go to the Orthodox synagogue, but they're sort of not very observant. They just go when it suits. And then the Orthodox Jews. And then, so I don't think that complexity is necessarily understood. And I think there's a lot of stereotypes about Jewish people. But I suppose if you live in Sydney or Melbourne, you've got a better understanding. I'm in a bit of an eastern suburbs bubble, so I probably have a exaggerated view on what people understand about Jewish people. Yes, I was. In short, I was very concerned. When I was writing it, I didn't think about it that much because I was just writing the story. But as the reality of publication became closer, I was concerned, largely because I am fully enmeshed in the community. So on a personal level, I was concerned about how my friends and family and my kids' parents, my kids' friends' parents might view it. But on a broader level, I think Jewish people love reading and consuming things about Jewish people. I mean, I do. I watch everything on Netflix and, all the books. So I think there is that interest, and I think we come from a culture that likes self-examination and questioning. And I definitely was raised in that tradition where, the thing about Judaism is you can question and you can doubt and you can criticize, and it doesn't matter. You're still one of us, no matter what you do. But I was also sensitive to the fact that there is this feeling in the community, this sort of sensitivity to any portrayal of our community that might be seen as negative. to the outside the broader community. I didn't want that to stop me from really exploring the darker side, because I think this is a universal story. I don't think it needs to be about a Jewish community. It could have been about any community. And I wasn't setting out to write a book about all Jews. But I know that some people might read it and see it as that. So I got a lot of Jewish readers to look at it with that lens from different parts of the community. In particular, I had an Orthodox Jewish woman read it, and I engaged with their feedback really thoroughly, and I took it on board. And I think two things I worked hard to do, and one was I wanted to make it really clear that at the latter stages, when the community really became a cult, or had many features of a cult, it was very clear that they'd gone beyond the bounds of mainstream Judaism. I didn't want someone to see an Orthodox Jew, in St Kilda or down at Bondi and think, well, that's what that person is like. And then the other thing I wanted to make sure I did was to try and show diversity in the Jewish characters, including the secular Jewish characters, to show, to even the minor characters, to make sure that they didn't just fall into stereotypes of Jewish people. No, I didn't, not at all. But my husband kept mentioning it. But I think I think it would be great. I mean, every writer would love to see their story, visually portrayed. But I didn't think about that. But I think that perhaps the Jewish culture and ritual transforms really well onto screen. And I was quite conscious in choosing the Blue Mountains as the location of where the community relocates, because I think that it's visually, it has this incredible majestic beauty, which sort of lends itself to euphoric devotion, but it also has this, this feeling of foreboding and this darkness beneath the leaves that I think would transform brilliantly onto screen. Yeah. I'm working on another novel, not overtly Jewish this time, but yeah, it'll probably work its way in there somewhere. But yeah, another contemporary fiction, and I suppose many of the same themes in it. It's basically about a woman who makes a really poor choice at a very weak moment, and all the things that follow. But it's told from multiple perspectives, so it'll be a little bit different.